Today we're going to be talking about Farfarwest, a new co-op PvE western first-person horde shooter that just released this last week. Now I have already talked about this game on the channel when I played the demo for it during Steam Next Fest a couple of months ago, which I thought was one of the major standouts of the entire event and I really enjoyed it. And now that it's out, I'm pretty happy to say that Farfarwest is pretty much exactly the game that I expected it would be in release. Before we get started, I do need to disclose that I was given a free key for this game for review purposes, and while I don't believe receiving this key will affect my final opinions on this game, I will always disclose when I'm given something for free, so anyone watching this has all the information they need to make their own decisions. Also, this game is in early access, so any of the things that I talk about can and will be subject to change. If there are any corrections or updates that I need to make, then you'll be able to find them as a pinned comment below, or maybe even a follow-up video if I feel like it warrants it. Now let's get into it. With Farfarwest, there isn't really much of a story to talk about with this game. It's cowboy robots versus skeletons and on occasion other evil robots. That's all you really need to know. While there is some dialogue and quests to do in the game, the majority of them are very jokey and unserious, which pretty accurately describes the tone of the entire game. So let's just move straight into the gameplay, because that is the meat and bones of this game. The best way to describe the gameplay of Farfarwest is that it is Helldivers mixed with Gunfire Reborn. It has the gameplay loop of dropping into a wide open map with a bunch of objectives to complete like Helldivers, with the shooting mechanics similar to the feeling of Gunfire Reborn, which is a fusion that works very well. But unlike Helldivers, you are not able to pick off your drop-off point when you enter a mission, and maps are not procedurally generated. When you drop into a map, you are given a main objective and a boss to kill, along with a host of side objectives and sometimes map-specific missions. Only the main objective and the boss are needed for beating the map, with the rest being optional stuff that gives rewards like XP, gold, and progress to unlocking some of the other maps in the game. There are currently 7 maps in the game, I believe, and while they are all static, the objectives in them and what boss you may get are randomized, so they won't be the same every time, and these objectives can range from memory puzzles to holdouts to hoarding cows. They're all fun enough, though it doesn't take a whole lot of time before you start seeing the same objectives over and over again. Also, in each of the 7 maps there are a bunch of different collectibles that you can collect throughout your runs, and most of the maps also have some kind of secret hidden mission, which are fun little things to figure out. The moment-to-moment gameplay is where I think Farfarwest shines the best. You are given a primary weapon, a secondary weapon, 3 spells, a support gadget, and a horse for getting around the map quicker. Each of the weapons in the game feel distinctly unique, and most of them feel pretty good to use, though there are only 5 primary weapons in total and 5 secondary weapons to choose from, which isn't a whole lot of variety, but with the meta progression and Joker system, the game is able to get quite a bit of mileage out of the small amount of weapons. And also the same can be said with the spells in the game. There are currently 5 different elements in the game: fire, electricity, acid, voodoo, and cactus. Each element has 5 spells to unlock, giving us a total of 25 overall to choose from, which is alright, but what I love about them is that a lot of the spells have a combo effect to them, meaning that you can combine your spells together for some pretty crazy effects. One of the cactus spells is a cactus turret, and if you hit that with a fireball and now it shoots fire. Or you can summon a fire wisp that follows down and hunts enemies, but if you hit it with electricity, it will zap around very quickly and hit everyone really fast. There are a lot of combinations, and you can combine spells with your co-partners too. And spells do have specific combinations, so you can't combine every spell with each other, which would have been pretty cool. That would have been very magical-like, but it is a lot of fun to experiment with. As I mentioned earlier, the enemies in this game are mostly skeletons. And, you know, it's okay as a design choice. When you go up in difficulty levels, it will add more different enemies that pose more of a threat. You know, things like mini-bosses or snipers. It's all very ghostly or skeleton-y. Sometimes there are other evil robots about the place, but, you know, it's mostly skeletons. It definitely feels like the game is missing just having a different faction to fight. I know that it is planned for later down the line in development for the game, but it definitely absolutely would have been nice to have something in the game that switches up the gameplay more drastically. Similar to how in Helldivers, how, you know, bugs and bots give off a completely different experience. Skeletons and ghosts are cool and all, and they work for the most part, but I just do get sick of seeing the same crop of, you know, enemies on every map. And the bosses are a bit of the same. There are just a handful of them. You'll have your favorites and you'll have your most hated ones. The designs are a bit more out there though, like with the Ghost Train and the Ghost Saloon. Those are very fun boss designs, but to fight them, look, they're bosses, they have mechanics, they do the job. They're not very much standout gameplay wise. I've just come off playing Saros, and the bosses in that game are just absolutely phenomenal, so it is kind of hard to get excited about the bosses in Farfarwest. And it's not this game's fault, it's just kind of bad timing. Also, expect a Saros review sometime on the channel this week as well, so stick around if you want to see that. The last main mechanic I haven't talked about yet is Jokers. Jokers are your standard roguelike type perk that you can find off of killing enemies or doing side objectives that exist to strengthen your character throughout a run. Having bullets do extra weak point damage or having extra speed while on low health, etc, etc. There are some useless ones in there, like making your footsteps into rubber ducky noises or just making your character brighter. Jokers only last for the run that you're in and are unfortunately taken off of you when you go on to the next map. The Jokers do kind of feel useless for the first few difficulties in the game, as they don't really drop often enough to actually get a decent build going. But as you go up in difficulties, the drop rate becomes higher and you can start to have more fun with this system. I'm definitely not the first person to think of this. My co-partner definitely said it a few times while we're playing, but a mode where you get to keep the Jokers in between maps would be pretty fun. Just as a kind of like a how hard can you actually break this game kind of way. And also, speaking of how you can play this game, you can play this game in co-op or single player. The game is much harder as a solo player than it is in co-op. Co-op gets the added benefit of being able to revive a teammate if they go down, whereas in solo, if you die, it will end your run instantly. And as the difficulties go up, it is much harder to manage all of the different threats as a single player. It's playable as a solo, but if you are playing that way, you'll probably find the difficulty scaling to be pretty sharp as you move from like hard to very hard. Whereas in co-op, the difficulty scaling feels a bit more natural. It's a bit of a brick wall when you're playing solo. One thing I do have to commend the game on is its meta progression. When you complete a mission, you earn XP for your character, as well as all of the guns and spells that you used throughout the mission. All of these can be leveled up and tweaked. With guns, you are able to tweak up its damage or clip size or fire rate. Similar with your character, you can upgrade your movement speed, health, jump height, things like that. And when you hit certain milestones, you can also attach Jokers so that you can start off the missions with them. The higher the level, the more Jokers you can put on the weapons and yourself, which will all allow you to take on harder difficulties of the game a bit better. The metagame stuff is really good. For people who like really grindy games, there is a lot of stuff to do. Maxing out all of your weapons will take a while, but it isn't so grindy that a casual player like myself can't, pick up a single weapon and enjoy the progression of leveling up that while playing the game just kind of normally. The only catch here is weapon unlocking. You unlock weapons by collecting blueprints, which you get by killing a boss or by killing a loot goblin, and sometimes very rarely from an objective on the map. Realistically, you get an average about 2 blueprints per mission, and you need about 6 to unlock a weapon, which is good as long as you don't unlock a weapon you end up disliking. And it probably takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to unlock a new weapon, but I think buyer's remorse could probably be very easily remedied by just having all of the guns available in the shooting range, just so people can just try it out. Spells are more straightforward in their progression. They are progressed by what element you use, and when you reach a certain milestone in that element, you unlock a new spell. You can use multiple spells of the same element, but you can't equip multiple of the same spell. This system works, it's fine. There's a lot more in-depth stuff for your character and guns. This doesn't need to be overly complicated. Along with this, there are a whole host of things to unlock. Things like emotes, skins for your characters, skins for your horse, titles, challenges to beat, Jokers to unlock, and there are certain skins and Jokers and titles that are like locked behind rare or difficult challenges, and there are also no microtransactions in the game currently, so you can actually do the old school gamer flex if you unlock something rare, which is fun. I miss when games did that. So let's talk about music. Farfarwest soundtrack is pretty decent. All of the maps come with their own kind of atmospheric tracks that sound alright. They create a decent atmosphere that fit the art style of the game, but where the soundtrack truly shines is with its battle music. The battle music in Farfarwest is what I would call Western electronic, which I guess essentially boils down to electronic beats with a banjo played over it. And it is really good. It's super catchy. The battle tracks do so much heavy lifting in terms of just bringing the robo-western theme of the game together. Like, I definitely feel like if this music wasn't here, then it wouldn't feel anywhere near as cohesive, but it does exist and it works, which is why the game feels like it has such a unique sense of style. Moving on to performance, Farfarwest runs very well on my machine. Specs are on the screen now. I ran this game at 1440p with everything on the highest setting, and I got a pretty decent 120 to 144 FPS throughout my game time. There was the rare frame drop, but I never went below 60 ever. I do suggest that if you want a higher frame rate to turn off lumen lighting, there is a very noticeable performance boost if you take this option off. Also, the game's default settings will have a 75 FPS lock on, Be sure to check that out before you get playing, or you'll be like me and just think, oh, 75 FPS is a weird frame rate to be stuck at. Moving on to the Steam Deck, this game currently isn't rated for Steam Deck, but I decided to try it anyway, and it actually runs pretty well. Better than a lot of other games that are rated for Steam Deck anyway. I think Valve were actually looking at fixing that because it feels like a lot of games can be rated for Steam Deck too easily. There were a couple graphical bugs with shadows while I was playing this game and a couple of minor frame drops, but the game seems completely playable on Steam Deck. I personally wouldn't play it on this though, and the main reason for that is just simply that it feels much better to play on a mouse and keyboard because it's a first-person shooter. But the option is there if that's the way you like to play. In conclusion, look, I absolutely recommend Farfarwest. Although the game can be played solo and is fun by yourself, I think this game is much better with friends, just because the gameplay feels much better suited for co-op play than it does solo. While this game is in early access, and that does come with some risks, I think this game is well worth the money in its current state. My general rule of thumb when it comes to buying early access games is that you need to be happy with the product you have, not the one that you may or may not get in the future, and Farfarwest passes that test very easily because it is pretty feature rich and it has a good amount of content and a solid gameplay loop. The game has a good foundation which feels like it would be very easy for the developers to build more content onto. And what makes this such an easy game to recommend is also just the price. The game is currently $26.95 Australian or $20 USD. The game is currently only available on Steam and no word yet on if there will be any kind of console release. I imagine the game would probably have to come out of early access before consoles come into the mix. Game time will vary from person to person. Unless you are a completionist, this isn't really a kind of game you complete. You just play it until you're sick of it. I'm sitting at about 10 hours of time of recording, and my friend who I was playing this with is currently at 24 hours played, which is a pretty solid effort considering the game only came out like 5 days ago. Anywho, I'd put the average playtime somewhere in between me and him. If you're looking for a decently priced co-op shooter, Farfarwest definitely fits the mold. There is room for improvement here and there, but the polish on this game as an early access title has me especially hopeful for its future. And that is all I have to say on Farfarwest, so thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video and please consider subscribing if you're new. Like I said earlier, Saros is next on the menu and it shouldn't be too far away, as I was working on the review for Farfarwest pretty much at the same time as I was doing the one for Saros. So expect that in a couple of days. As always, thank you so much to my YouTube members for their continued support, and I will see you all soon. Bye.